Okay, it's dialing.
Well, good afternoon. This is Senator Pat Roberts. Thank you for taking time to join me on our live town hall meeting via phone, or what we like to call Chat with Pat. Now, I want to hear from as many of you as I can about the issues you care about. You can also add me on Facebook and Twitter to see what we are fighting for every day in your behalf. Now, if you'd like to ask a question, here's how it works. Press 0 to ask a question right now or any time during the call. Easy deal. Press 0 to ask me a question. Now, this call is going to last for the next hour, and I'll try to get to as many questions as possible. This live call is official in nature, so if we can keep the campaign and politics on the back burner, that's what we ought to do. Again, for those of you just joining the call, this is Senator Pat Roberts, and I am hosting a free live town hall meeting via telephone, what we call Chat with Pat. Press 0 at any time during this call if you would like to ask me a question. But first, allow me to update you on our work on your behalf. Now, I am sure you have heard the reporting about the Environmental Protection Agency's new proposed regulations that will require existing power plants to reduce their carbon emissions by 30% over the next 15 years. This announcement means that every family struggling in this tough economy to make ends meet will be looking at a more expensive energy bill next year. Now, I'm going to try to use every legislative tool to fight this short-sighted proposal, including supporting legislation to prevent the EPA from finalizing this rule and limiting funding through the appropriations process. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce says the Obama administration's latest in-run around Congress, and that's what it is, another in-run around Congress, will cost about 225,000 U.S. jobs on average every year through 2030. These regulations would also increase electricity costs by $289 billion and lower households' disposable income by $586 billion through that same period. Now, Kansans are already burdened by Obamacare and still struggling in the Obama economy. We just simply can't afford this agenda driven by EPA overreach. Worse still, by the Obama administration's own admission. And get this, these regulations and any unilateral action by the United States would have little, if any, impact on global temperatures, as long as large developing countries like Russia and China and India and Brazil simply continue to increase their carbon emission on an annual basis. Anything we will do will be inconsequential, and actually the United States has lowered their CO2 emissions already. This proposal amounts to all pain, no gain. Again, for those of you just joining the call, this is Senator Pat Roberts. I am hosting a free live town hall meeting via telephone, what I like to call Chat with Pat. Press 0 anytime during this call if you'd like to ask me a question. This week we learned of the return of America's last missing soldier in Afghanistan, U.S. Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, secured by the release of 5 detainees from Guantanamo Bay to another country. I strongly believe in the bond that makes our military force the greatest in the world. That's the ethos of never leaving a soldier behind, that we have your back. Now, for the past 21 months, I have had deep concerns that this bond was broken by this president and his handling of the Benghazi terrorist attacks. I do not think that our president understands or believes in the bond the way I do, the way a Marine does, the way our warfighters do, the way our veterans do. Susan Rice, who else? Susan Rice took to the Sunday shows, yet again, to support the president's decision to release 5 highly dangerous detainees, the worst of the worst, in exchange for Sergeant Bergdahl, without notifying Congress, all in the name of supporting this bond to never leave a patriot behind. But Susan Rice had no problem leaving Ambassador Stevens and the 3 other Americans all serving this nation behind in Benghazi. It begs the question, why did this president ignore the law, circumvent Congress, and proceed on his own agenda without any oversight or approval? This president is no stranger to ignoring the will of the Congress, and it is time he understood that the Constitution ensures a special balance between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches to ensure tyranny never rules America. I am really fed up with the president's contempt for the Constitution and the Congress. After today's call, I will be attending the administration's classified briefing to try to get all the facts. I am prepared for this administration to try and avoid giving the hard answers, but I'm also ready to press for them. Why did they negotiate to the terrorist demands, providing 5 of their most valued detainees? How did they have time to plan a White House Rose Garden press conference, but not time to notify members of Congress? Why did Susan Rice say that Sergeant Bergdahl served with distinction only to have the Army turn around and announce they are investigating why he deserted his post in the first place? Now, as this issue continues to unfold, I promise to provide timely updates and answers as we have them from this president. Again, this is Senator Pat Roberts, and I'm conducting a live town hall meeting. Please press 0 to ask a question. As the senior Marine in the Congress, I have long fought to ensure our military heroes receive the care and the benefits that they deserve. Issues about backlogged claims, coupled with the breaking news about the Arizona Veterans Administration Hospital, and now we are learning that right at home in Wichita, veterans may have been put at risk. This is a tragic and outrageous situation. We must do better for our veterans while Congress holds hearings and investigates these specific cases. I have joined my colleagues proposing legislation that I believe would improve the Department of Veterans Affairs. The Department of Veterans Affairs Management Accountability Act. A lot of words. One especially, accountability. This bill would give complete authority to the VA Secretary to fire or demote these VA leaders based on performance. We need the best employees managing the Veteran Affairs departments. Likewise, I support an independent investigation of the VA. We have to find out what went wrong and why. We have to find out who is responsible for the decisions that led to unresponsive care or unscrupulous practices. And we must hold them accountable. And yes, that should include the possibility of criminal charges. Now, I have signed a letter written by Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina that calls for a special investigation of the VA waitlist cover-up and whether VA employees may have received performance bonuses which we now know they did not deserve. Last week, I went to the Topeka and Wichita VA facilities. I will go to the Kansas City VA this weekend. I have a lot of follow-up questions, especially regarding the Wichita VA. I am deeply disappointed that Wichita has been using a so-called secret list. This list was unauthorized and managed veterans waiting for home health care, and that was the reason that the list was separate. The VA determined this list put veterans at risk. According to the Wichita VA, there were 385 veterans on that list. I have demanded answers from Wichita. Who were these veterans? What kind of care did they receive? What is their status now? I have also made the Office of Inspector General at the VA aware of my concerns with this list and other problems at Wichita. The Inspector General is running the investigation nationwide. These problems must be examined and rectified immediately. Rest assured, we must fix the problems within the VA so that veterans receive the care they deserve and that this country owes them. Again, this is Senator Pat Roberts, and I'm conducting a live town hall meeting. Please press 0 to ask a question. First question is, we have Shirley from Wichita.
Yes, I'm calling from Wichita, Kansas. I filed a claim in regards to my father that passed 2004, and I was denied. So can I refile that claim against the VA, against what happened with my dad?
Shirley, I don't know that, and I'm very sorry you're having these problems and that situation with your dad. We have a great team of staff who every day help Kansas navigate the federal government, more especially with the VA. No matter the federal agency, we can help cut the red tape, make sure you are treated fairly. I want you to call my Wichita office, and we can get started working on your problem right away. I am very sorry it has been difficult for you, but I would like to see what we can do to help. Now, here's the number. I hope you can take it down. This is the Wichita number you should call, 316-263-0416. Let me repeat it, 316-263-0416. Please call my office, that's your office really, in Wichita, and we'll see what we can do in your behalf. Thank you for that call. We have Charles from El Dorado.
Hello. On the VA deal, I have a couple questions. One's on the pipeline and one's on VA. My brother is a Vietnam vet. I'm a Vietnam Air vet. And I seen problems, took him to the Wichita VA. They just shunned him off somewhere else. And we're in, matter of fact, this Friday I'm taking him to Kansas City for a checkup. But I don't understand why, the VA here in Wichita isn't as good as Kansas City and Topeka. And also, I belong to the American Legion, and we tried to get a minor emergency unit set up, which the American Legion here had offered the property, and to save, cut down on how much was going to Wichita. And I was just told, we're planning on doing that, but we're looking at a different area. Well, we had the property that we was going to give them, and El Dorado is a centralized area. So it made more sense for it here, especially if the property is going to be free. Now, that's my thing on the VA, but he gets better service in Topeka and Kansas City than he did here. The other thing is the pipeline. I truly disagree with why the Republicans, which I've been a Republican all my time of being able to vote, is pushing for this pipeline to go down to Texas to be, the main part of the barrel is going to be shipped off to, the main parts that you can use. It's going to be sent off to China or wherever. And, of course, we'll keep the diesel and the kerosene and the gas, but, that's just extra expense from the ship. I can't understand why we want to go through that and what's going to happen to the byproducts that are left, or not even byproducts, the junk that's out of this dirty oil. Where's it going to be dumped? In our Gulf? Am I missing anything here?
Well, let's take first your situation with the Wichita VA. I have personally looked into the Wichita VA and plan on asking the Veterans Office of Inspector General to make sure that they are serving the veterans of Wichita. I am concerned over the number of veterans who had to wait over 90 days. I'm concerned about the fact that they have problems hiring and firing folks. If somebody gets out of medical school and says, well, I'd like to train some in the VA, or I'd like to serve in the VA, it takes them 6 to 9 months to approve that person. Well, that person's not going to stay around for 6 to 9 months. So you're not getting the very best prospects, number one. Number two, there is something called progressive discipline. And we're looking into that, in that it is very difficult to fire anybody or to let anybody go. You have to have a verbal statement, and then you have to have a written statement, then the person can appeal it, then back to a verbal statement, then back to a written statement, on and on and on. So that's a real problem as well. Basically, on your other point with regards to the pipeline, let me point out this project has been reviewed for over 5 years. 5 environmental impact statements that did conclude it was safe. This project, and I'm assuming that this environmental impact statement is from the get-go to the concerns that you raised. The project makes sense economically to me, environmentally, apparently to the review from a national security perspective. I think we're right at the juncture of becoming energy independent. That would mean that we would not be hostage to the basic foreign cartels for our oil supply or energy supply. It would also mean that if we lifted the ban on selling natural gas to Europe, they would be less dependent on Russia. That takes away Mr. Putin's ace card. And I think our national security policy would benefit from that. Now that oil is being refined in the Midwest as well as in Texas. As for the crude from Canada, that will all be refined here, and there won't be any dumping of the products in the Gulf, I can assure you. I hope that is some assurance for you, and I am sorry that you're getting better treatment in Topeka and Kansas City as opposed to Wichita. If you want, please call my staff in Wichita, so if we can pick up that El Dorado initiative. That number again is 316-263-0416, and we'll be happy to check on that. I just don't know. I need more information on that, and I hope you can provide our Wichita office 316-263-0416 with that concern. And thank you, Charles. We have Mark from Wichita.
Senator, thank you for the town hall. I want to, in front of everybody, I want to thank everybody. Thank you first. Since 2010, I'm a Vietnam veteran. Since 2010, I've been fighting with the VA over some disabilities, particularly tinnitus and hearing loss, while I served in Vietnam. January of this year, I was told by the VA that I would finally get a hearing, an appeal hearing, in 2015. Your office got involved. I actually have a hearing with the VA on June the 26th of this year. So I want to tell you very, very much how much I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mark.
My question is this, and I'm going to be very candid about this. As a Vietnam veteran, I'm appalled at the exchange that took place this past week with giving up the 5 Taliban for a young man who, by all appearances, was a deserter. And what bothers me most is not so much that the president broke the law without the 30-day notice. I'm not as concerned about that as in listening to Judge Andrew Napolitano and Steve McCarthy, who is a federal prosecutor. They both said that this administration has a bigger problem in that he's broken the law in that it's an aiding and abetting. He is providing assets or resources back to a terrorist group. My question is this, Senator, when are we going to do something about this? And I'm talking about impeachment at the very minimum.
Let me point out something to you, regardless of the concern that you have, and I share your concern. When we learn about this and we hear the administration say, well, we did this because we had somebody's back. Well, nobody had anybody's back at Benghazi. I just think that's absolutely remarkable that somebody could say that. But I share your concerns about the president's action, especially his abuse of executive powers. He has changed the Affordable or the Unaffordable Care Act 41 times. 41 times he should have come back to the Congress. So personally, I'm using all means at my disposal to defend the Constitution and our divided powers, and that includes legislative initiatives, lawsuits, and the bully pulpit, and also the appropriations process if we can ever get back to that. And I'm not going to let up. But in regard to impeachment, I want to remind you that the Constitution created a process for impeaching the president should he engage in treason, bribery, high crimes, or misdemeanors. Now, maybe you feel that his actions fit in that category. But the important thing to remember, folks, is that only the House of Representatives can decide whether impeachment is the appropriate course of action. Here in the Senate, we must wait until the majority of the House votes to bring impeachment charges. Now, if the House were to pass impeachment charges, just go back several years, that's what happened with President Clinton, a 2/3 majority in the Senate would need to vote to convict the president before he could be removed from office. Now, that's not impossible, but impeaching a sitting president was intentionally made a very difficult process by our founding fathers. And one other thing, due to the majority in the Senate being held by the Democratic Party, and more especially Majority Leader Reid, controlling what items the Senate considers, it is an uphill battle for an impeachment conviction to even be considered in the Senate. But I do share your sense of frustration, and I do feel that this is a very bad black mark on the history of the United States, and more especially our military. I'm going to a briefing right after I finish this teletown hall meeting, and I will keep you posted on what the administration is telling us. And as a former member of the Intelligence Committee and former chairman, I think I have some pretty tough questions to be asking. Thank you, sir. Just a reminder, this is Senator Pat Roberts. This is a live teletown hall meeting. Thank you for taking the time out of your afternoon to join me. Please press 0 to ask a question. Limited on time, but we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. 0 at any time. Next question is Thomas of Wichita.
Yes, Senator. I just got a couple questions to you. One is because the GSA scandal happened quite a while ago. We've heard nothing about that. The IRS has spent $5 million on Vegas trips, plus giving iPods and others to the employees. And, you know, what's being done, because we did it in private industry, basically we get 1099s and be taxed on that. And where's the accountability as you as the senator of the purse strings of the IRS, and also giving bonus to employees who owe taxes? Well, what's being done about that? I mean, the GSA scandal that happened about 2 years ago. Heard nothing about that. The IRS $5 million they spent in Vegas. Now we heard nothing about that. And now the bonus would be given to IRS employees, and then the VA comes up on top of everything.
Well, let me respond, Thomas. I agree with you. I'm in complete agreement with you. First of all, I'm outraged the Internal Revenue Service continues to suppress people's First Amendment rights. That is a very dangerous precedent, and I will not rest until we get the IRS out of the business of regulating free speech, along with performance bonuses or trips to Las Vegas and the rest of the things that you mentioned. I have offered legislation to rein in the IRS. I am working on additional proposals to address the IRS targeting of conservative organizations. Remember, this scandal goes right to the heart of our system of government, that the government must be held accountable to the people for its actions. And the IRS ran a deliberate campaign to damp down the participation of these groups in the election. It was voter suppression. This is why I introduced legislation to block any IRS rules in this area. They were getting ready to cement in these rules. Now, my bill halted further action on proposed regulations until the Justice Department and the congressional investigation by the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee, of which I am a member, into the IRS actions are complete. The bill freezes further IR action for 1 year. It would make it clear that the IRS can only enforce the regulations that were in place before all this mess began. And I'm happy to report that the House recently passed its version of the same bill. I'm also glad to tell you that my pressure has paid off and the IRS has backed off for the time being from pursuing these regulations. We need to permanently block the IRS from its misguided efforts to regulate free speech. And we're continuing to investigate whether the very government, sworn to uphold the constitutional right of our citizens, has been engaged in not only unethical behavior, but potentially illegal activity in an effort to stifle any political positions counter to its own. We're going to keep investigating. We're going to get to the bottom of it, and I will not rest until we have a full understanding that these incidents and full accountability will take place for these accounts. And I thank you very much for the call. Shirley of Wichita.
I have such a problem that I don't even know where to begin, but my husband and I are senior citizens, 75, and he was very ill at the time the economy went, and he was in the hospital 5 weeks, and I never looked at anything, and poof, it just took away all of our savings, but we worked around, and so we've been purchasing our drugs at Dillon's on their generic deal, and it worked fine last year, and we didn't have to go into the donut hole. But in 4 months now, they say he's in the donut hole, and we have to pay $1,700 every 3 months for his insulin until we get out of it. And I have called everyone. I've called Pompey's office. I've called the Insurance Commission, Sam Brownback, everybody. And they just tell me to suck it up. And there just isn't any money to buy that with. And it turns out that Dillon's, of course, gave us the generic drug for like $4 to $10, and we paid for it. But they also sent it through to, we had our deal with Medco. Evidently now it's been sold to Express Script, and now they just took it and put it in. We buy it at Dillon's on their generics, but when they sent it through to Express, they would charge us against it like $100 or like $30 or whatever it was they wanted to. And now we're in a donut hole, and we're not able. We sold our house. We went to a dump trying to figure out a way, and we don't know how to get out of it. And everybody I've called has been so rude to us.
Well, Shirley, let me tell you this. I want you to take down the following number, 316-263-0416.
Okay.
I'm so sorry that you're going through the experience that you're going through. And I can assure you, the person that answers that phone, and they're listening to this as I am, we will treat you with the respect that you deserve, and we will do everything we possibly can to address your problem. I'm committed to ensure that Part D enrollees, which I think you are, have access to the affordable prescriptions that they need. And you were getting that. And I do think there's been a change in the donut hole that would be of advantage to you. But I don't want to promise you that until you talk to one of our caseworkers there in the Wichita office. And nobody in my office, your office, is going to treat you in any other way but respect and give 110% to see if we cannot solve your problem. That number again, 316-263-0416. Shirley, I'm so sorry you're going through this experience, and thank you. Sandy of Wichita.
Hello, Senator Roberts.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Sandy in Wichita.
Yes, ma'am.
We seem to have a terrible problem in Congress with stalemates and gridlock, and I just wondered what your experience has been proposing any legislation and trying to get a positive vote.
Well, Sandy, I'm all for bipartisanship. I think I have a proven record down through the years of working across the aisle. I always try to encourage my colleagues to find common ground on important issues rather than pursue, politics. In fact, in April, bipartisan legislation that I authored was signed into law. This was not a partisan issue, rather a common sense solution to our rural communities across the country. Last November, a compounding bill that I had been reaching across the aisle for support to ensure that your prescription drugs are safe worked its way through the House and Senate. It was signed into law. I am pleased the Senate can speak as one voice when we passed a resolution I introduced that recognized the importance of biosecurity and agro-defense in the United States. That's the facility that is being built at Kansas State. Some other examples, we passed legislation to ensure doctor payments are at a level to sustain patient access. Student loan legislation that has set permanently the interest rates for all the new issued loans, ensuring the certainty for students and parents. But here's the rest of the story. The Democratic Majority Leader, Harry Reid, has the full say as to what bills are brought to the floor. Consistently, Mr. Reid, Leader Reid, has prevented Republicans from offering any amendments to legislation being considered. The amendments for the entire year have been 9 amendments that have been introduced by Republicans and to be considered in the Senate. And of course, they were all defeated. Now, you got to at least restore the Senate back to what it used to be. For 225 years, the minority had certain rights. The Farm Bill 2 years ago, we had 73 amendments that we voted on, 300 offered. Democrats, Republicans, some of them not even germane to the Farm Bill. And that's the way the Senate used to work. It doesn't work that way now. So Majority Leader Harry Reid, and I'm going to put the responsibility square on his shoulders. Because in the last Farm Bill, Senator Grassley, Senator Johans, Senator Thune, myself, all had amendments to the Farm Bill. He just looked at us and said, time's up, sorry, no amendments. That's not how the Senate was intended to operate. So I, as a senator, in representing you, have a right to offer amendments to make legislation better and to reflect the interest of Kansans who elected me. It's plain wrong for Senator Reid to run the Senate like he's been doing for the past 6 years. Now, I can't change that. I'm not trying to blame Harry so much. It's just facts are stubborn things. That's the way it is. He, by the way, is going to introduce an amendment to change the First Amendment. With all due respect, I don't think he looks well in James Madison's wig. And for him to go ahead and offer alleged reform to the First Amendment, simply dealing with people that he doesn't like to have the right of free speech that happen to disagree with him, that's just way out of line. Now, I didn't mean to get on a real speech against Harry Reid. I know Harry. I've known him for quite a few years, but I don't know the Harry Reid as of today. And if he does not even allow Republicans the opportunity to offer reasonable alternatives that we think would work better, there's something wrong here with regards to minority rights. And if Republicans would take control of the Senate, we ought to put the genie back in the bottle and give minority rights to others. Just a reminder, thank you for that. Just a reminder, Senator Pat Roberts, live teletown hall meeting. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me. Please press 0 to ask a question. Also, if you're interested in receiving updates from me on a regular basis, you can press 7 to subscribe to e-newsletters, and a member of my staff will take down your email address. Why don't you go ahead and just press 7, and we'll give you updates. If you like them, keep them. If you don't, you know what you can do with them. Again, press 0 to ask a question, 7 to receive the e-letters. We have Eric of Wichita. Eric, are you there?
Good afternoon, Senator. Good afternoon, Senator.
Good afternoon, sir.
I'm a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, and I think I'm getting sick and tired of we got a Marine in a prison in Mexico, and that president could pick up the phone and he could get him out of there, I'm sure, in an hour. But is it going to take us veterans across the country to march on Washington and say, enough is enough? All he does is gives big speeches, and he's acting like a king. And this is real dangerous because in the end, if this continues, this country will fall apart in time. I'm 75 years of age. I won't see it, but my grandchildren and children could be living in the near-distant future in a totally different U.S. America. And we better put a stop to it now, and I know you're trying, but what can we do as veterans across this nation is to get that Marine released as an honest mistake, and it can be taken care of in a matter of minutes. What are you doing to put more pressure on our president to make that telephone call?
I've not talked with the president about this. Seems to me if he could take the action, take the time to hold a press conference on this most recent situation, on the detainee release, that he could at least take the time for this Marine with regards to what has happened in Mexico. My thoughts and prayers go out to the family and to Sergeant Andrew Tamorisi. And I hope that the State Department, whose mission includes assisting U.S. citizens incarcerated abroad, is working their very hardest to ensure Sergeant Tamorisi receives fair treatment. I'm just going to call him Andrew. Due to the privacy release, Sergeant Tamorisi, or Andrew, signed with the State Department, I am prohibited from discussing the details. But we've been in contact with the State Department several times, many times. I am a Marine. Marines do not leave their people behind. Marines don't. And I am hopefully they're doing all they can to assist Andrew and his family. Now, Secretary Kerry raised the issue during his visit to Mexico. I think it would be a very good idea for the President to simply pick up the phone and call the appropriate folks in that country. Additionally, the U.S. Consulate in Tijuana has been in close contact with the sergeant and his family, and they have assisted him in hiring, finally, an English-speaking Mexican lawyer. I'm going to continue to keep my eye on this situation and request regular updates from the State Department until this is resolved. I think your suggestion with the President taking an active interest in this is a very good one. Until he is released, I know all my fellow Marines join me in sending him a Semper Fi, and that's what we will do. And by the way, Eric, I think you're echoing a palpable fear that I hear from too many Kansans who worry about the America that they cherish and they love and they prospered in will not be the America for their kids and grandkids. That may be the number one issue that we face in this country. Thank you, Eric. We have
Joni?
Connie from Wichita.
Hi, when I was listening to the veteran a few minutes ago talking about the executive orders that Obama just issues all the time, that is just out of control. Is there no limit or any kind of impact or what's the word I'm thinking of? Is there no way to put a rein on him? He thinks he's the czar.
Well, Joni, we've won some battles in the war against regulations. I introduced a bill with 39 co-sponsors to prevent the IRS from enacting rules targeting groups based on their political beliefs. We won that one. Following the outcry of active students way out in St. Francis, left hungry by the new USDA school breakfast and lunch calorie restrictions, we finally persuaded the USDA to reconsider the rules. I didn't know until yesterday that the First Lady, Michelle Obama, had actually called members of an appropriations committee here to urge them to prevent a baked potato from being served at a school lunch. When on earth does the First Lady of our country, or the President for that matter, have time to do that? What is that all about? With the leadership of Senator Jerry Moran, we fought and won the elimination of ridiculous labor rules for children who work on the family farm. To protect the privacy and safety of pilots, we got rid of FAA regulations, which would have disclosed the tail numbers of general aviation aircraft on the Internet. Every day, though, I learn of new burdens, new costs, new regulations. They're terribly counterproductive, and they're very silly. There is no cost-benefit yardstick being applied. So let me just say that we continue to fight this as hard as we can. The President continues to issue his executive orders. He's changed the Health Care Act 41 times. I was just on the floor of the Senate this afternoon complaining about that and asking for an Inspector General that would cover the entire Health Care Act so we could know what the heck is going on. The IRS has improperly targeted conservative groups in a voter suppression effort. There's a long history of him doing this, and your answer, what can we do about it? Well, we can take the money away from the agency that is implementing the regulations. The problem there is Harry Reid seldom lets us consider an appropriations bill. We think we'll get 5 or 6 of them done this particular fiscal year. If we do that, we can take the money away from some of these agencies who are trying to implement some of these executive decisions. It's interesting to me that the Judicial Watch, who asked for information as to how all this comes about, they were able to get the full information. Senate Finance Committee, who has 603 powers, and that means subpoena powers, we asked for the same information, and we find this information comes back redacted. That means it's all black. You can't understand anything about it. Well, I've been through that during my intelligence days on the Intelligence Committee. That's wrong, absolutely wrong. So it is a worrisome thing. It is legislation by executive fiat. It's legislation where he is ignoring the Congress. I know why he's doing it, because he can't get anything through the House of Representatives, and if things don't break right this election, he won't through the Senate either. But we will have at least more of an opportunity to stop issuing all these executive orders. He's destroying the separation between the legislative and the judiciary and the executive. Okay, we have Deborah from Belle Plaine.
Yes, hello, Senator. My question is twofold. I would like to know what you're able to do about controlling the EPA and these new regulations with waterways and the effect it has on our farmers and ranchers. And the other is the control of our geological exploration for oil with the dang prairie chickens.
Deborah, you hit on probably the two top issues that I hear about in western Kansas, other than the fact that we need the rain. We pretty well, I don't say we've lost the entire wheat crop, but I hope it's better for corn. And our livestock industry is under a great deal of stress. Get back to your question. The EPA is working with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and they have proposed regulations that would allow the EPA to further expand its control under the guise of the Clean Water Act. And I am actively opposing this regulation, and I've already sent I don't know how many letters with colleagues in the House and Senate telling the agencies withdraw it. I've also co-sponsored legislation that would block the regulations from taking effect. From every corner of the state, I hear from farmers, ranchers, small business owners, and others who are tired of the federal government's overreach and want this administration to work with them instead of against them. I just talked to a farmer here this past week out in western Kansas. He said, Senator, I'm not being governed, I'm being ruled. Now, the Clean Water Act doesn't mean that a navigable water is a farm pond. I just know that you're not just really wanting to jump out, Deborah, and take a canoe into your farm pond and guide it between all the critters out there that are hopefully getting enough water. That's ridiculous. We have the same situation with streams that have no water in them, or underground water. This is taking this to a degree that is absolutely ridiculous. Now, the prairie chicken. I don't even know how to begin on this, but I'm trying to convince the Fish and Game people, not the EPA, Fish and Game people, Department of Interior, and the Endangered Species Act, which is really the problem. When they listed the lesser prairie chicken under the Endangered Species Act, they have the authority now, they think, to come on a farmer's grant and tell him to plant native prairie grass as opposed to normal crops so that the lesser prairie chicken would have a habitat. Well, the reason the chicken doesn't have a habitat is we've had a drought. Now, when it rains, and it will, sooner or later, Mother Nature will make it rain. We've done this through the 50s, the 70s, the 90s, the 30s. It is going to rain again. That habitat will come back, and then the lesser prairie chicken will be the greater lesser prairie chicken. I don't understand why people don't understand that. Did you know that even if you have an oil rig on your land, if you're fortunate enough to do that, that the height of the rig might encourage raptors, the peregrine falcon, from nesting there and then attacking the lesser prairie chicken? You can't even find that bird right now because of the drought. This is the kind of thing that just makes you want to really wonder what government's all about. The real answer? Reform the Endangered Species Act. I would only end with this. Farmers and ranchers are becoming the endangered species, not that doggone bird. Thank you. Again, this is Senator Pat Roberts. I have time for a few more questions, so stay on the line. At the end of the call today, I'm going to transfer everybody to voicemail, where you will have the option to leave your question and comments along with your name and address, and I promise to get back to you. If there's an issue you'd like help with, remember you can always call me at 316-263-0416, or visit with me at roberts.senate.gov. You can also add me on Facebook or Twitter, so please add me there too. Let's have some more questions. We have Johnny from Belle Plaine.
Yeah, Pat, I just wanted to talk to you about this patching the IRS. know that's your big thing right now is patching the IRS. What's wrong with passing the Fair Tax Bill S-122?
Well, I ain't patching nothing. I'm on the Fair Tax Bill. So there's a tax extender bill that should be passed, and it should be the predicate or the first blueprint for true tax reform. But I can tell you that the fair tax has moved from the back burner to the front burner for serious consideration, and I'm a co-sponsor of that. Patching isn't going to get us much, patching is patching, and we need some real road construction to a tax code that is more fair, more simple, you can understand it, et cetera, et cetera. So I am a co-sponsor of the fair tax. And thank you for calling, Johnny. Ben from Wichita.
Yeah, I was wondering if Obamacare is just a new normal, or if there's going to be changes to it. I don't know anything about the healthcare industry, so if you can enlighten me on that one.
Well, I continue to support all efforts to repeal and replace this unworkable law. I've introduced legislation to ensure the American people would not suffer when this train wreck failed, as we always knew it would. We had a bill called the Exchange Sunset Act that would have sunset the exchanges and the individual mandate if they weren't ready to enroll by October 1 of last year. That didn't happen. And I've been trying to alert Americans to the consequences that lurk in the rationing provisions that are in the bill or in the law. I have two bills to eliminate rationing provisions that are part of Obamacare, each targeting different boards and provisions that would doubtlessly come between you and your doctor. In particular, my legislation abolishes something called the Independent Payment Advisory Board, which, boy, if you trigger that one, it will allow the federal government to determine what kind of care seniors can receive. That's certainly not right. Basically, decisions should be between you and your doctor. I think health savings accounts are a good idea, but basically, what I want is a watchdog. What I want is a transparency watchdog. I introduced a bill to create Obamacare watchdog, establishing a special inspector general that would have all the appropriate authority to investigate and audit any programs or activities related to Obamacare. The problem is that different agencies have their inspector generals, but they don't talk to each other. It's like they live in silos. So I think we need to do everything possible to repeal and replace this law with real reforms that lower costs, restore the all-important relationship between a patient and their doctor. As long as this law is on the books, we need an Obamacare watchdog. I just introduced that bill this afternoon, made a big speech about it. So I hope that's helpful to you. I appreciate your calling. James of Wichita.
Yes, Senator. I would like to know what you think about the exchange he made for that prisoner. And then if he is found guilty of leaving his post, what would be the cost of getting, how much would he go through to get him out of the military if he gets out? And the last thing I want to follow up with is, how do we plan to, what is your suggestion to reform Obamacare? And when I say reform, I mean replace, keep the good things that work in Obamacare, like covering people with pre-existing conditions and reining in how much doctors can overcharge the government.
Well, let's start with Sergeant Bo Bergdahl. I think we have to wait a while for the facts of that case to be determined. I'm going to a briefing just as soon as this hour is up, and we have concluded this teletown hall meeting. I hope that they will clear things up about that. It's interesting to note that most of his platoon indicated that he simply walked off post. What you do with that kind of a situation is you get the facts of the case, and then you go from there under normal military procedure. Sergeant Bergdahl will be tried under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, who will decide if he is guilty or of any charge, and then the sentence would come forward. Let me just say that I strongly believe and the bond that makes our military force the greatest in the world, and that's the ethos of never leaving a soldier behind. And I am a little stunned, to say the least. For the past 21 months, I have had deep concerns this bond was broken by this president and his handling of the Benghazi terrorist attacks. And I don't think the president understands or believes in the way I do, the way a Marine does, the way our warfighters do. Susan Rice, of all people, took to the Sunday shows yet again to support the president's decision to release 5 highly dangerous detainees in exchange for Sergeant Bergdahl without notifying Congress in the name of supporting this bond to never leave a patriot behind. If that isn't duplicitous, I don't know what is. Now, they had no problem leaving Ambassador Stevens and the 3 other Americans all serving this nation behind in Benghazi. It begs the question, why did the president ignore the law, circumvent Congress, and proceed on his own agenda without any oversight or any approval? So, after today's call, I will be attending the administration's classified briefing to try and get more facts, and we will be reporting them as they come about. And I am prepared for this administration to try and avoid giving the hard answers. I'm going to press for them, big time. Thank you for your call. Again, this is Senator Roberts. Thank you for tuning in this afternoon. For those of you who had a question and we were unable to get to you, you will now have the option of leaving a voicemail where you can leave any comments or concerns, along with your name and address, and I will get back to you. Remember, with your comments, please leave your name and address, otherwise, obviously, I won't know where to send your response. If there's an issue you want help with, remember again, we've had several calls with casework. Remember, you can always call my Wichita office. That's your office, folks, at 316-263-0416. Or, all of you techies, you can visit with me on the web at roberts.senate.gov. For those of you on Facebook and Twitter, you can find me there too, so add me for the daily updates. Thank you again for participating in my teletown hall meeting tonight. My time is up. Thank you so much for yours.